We begin the current Daf, Mesech Kidushin Daf Ayin Tes. We begin on the bottom of Ayin Ches on my base, 4 lines up on the bottom of the Amud, where we continue with the next Mishnah, which in the discussion comes up, as we'll see in Rashi, related to this concept about Yichus, which obviously is the title of this parak regarding the Yichus of an individual. Today's Daf, and Eretz throughout the entire world. So we'll discuss in today's Daf are what happens if Kitcha v'yibaderech? What happens if her father went on the road to go find her a mate, and then Kitcha asks from she goes and she's Mekadesh herself in town, and now she's a Begeres. So the question is, well, as we'll see in the Gemara's discussion, when did she become a Begeres? Who did the Kidushin first, herself or her father? Which that relates to the concept of Chazaka Dahashta, regarding the presumption of something as it is right now versus what it previously was, or what it's going to be. The halacha of that, we could turn for Kidushin by both of them, for the father and for the daughter, and that gets into a discussion in the Gemara regarding mikvah shenimdid. What happens if you measure mikvah and you find it lacking? So when do you suspect, when do you know definitively that it was good, that it's not good? And the Gemara wants to relate a machlekes amiram to machlekes hanoim. When someone writes his nechasim to someone else, and he doesn't leave over anything for himself, so the presumption is that then he was doing it as a shchimera. The question is, do we presume that it was for shchimera? Because when the shchimera dies, and when he stays alive, he gets it all back. But if a bari does it, and he was, let's say, not writing off everything, so we say, even if he survived, that wasn't, you were giving it away, so that becomes a discussion regarding how do we know if the person was doing it b'torah shchimera or not. So we begin the current daf on the bottom of Ayin Chesem Beis, 4 lines up on the bottom of the Amud. So the Gemara continues with the next Mishnah on this topic of Yichus. Says the Mishnah, Mishnah Nosnu Reshus L'Shluchay. Someone gives permission to his agent, L'Kadosh Es Bitoy, to betroth his daughter. Says, Chabat you're going out to the big city, do me a favor, find the boy for my daughter. Okay. And that guy goes and he gets he gets a shidduch for that guy's daughter. So Im Shaloi Kadmai, meaning is that the father himself goes and is a Kadishar. So he had sent the shliach, then the father himself goes and does the Kidushin. So the Mishnah says a seemingly very simple halacha, Im Shaloi Kadmai, if the father's Kidushin came first, Kidushin. His Kidushin is going to be Kidushin, which the Chiddush in this is, as we'll see in the Gemara, that because the father was nullifying the shlichus of the shliach. Obviously, if he's going before the shliach to do the Kidushin, he's saying, Ichti the Kidushin, I'm not relying on your Kidushin. So if he came first, the father's Kidushin is Kidushin. But if the agent's Kidushin came first, then Kiddush of Kidushin. Then his Kidushin is going to be a Kidushin. Fine. What happens if any Yedua, what happens if you don't know which one came first? They both say, they called each other up and says, I did Kidushin for your daughter. Said, well, I did Kidushin also for my daughter. And we don't know who came first. They didn't look at the clock. So then as we continue up at top of Ayin Tesah Aleph, Shneim Noisim Get. So both of them give a get, meaning if she wants to marry someone else, we're not sure. She might be engaged to this one, to this one. Both have to give a get. Now, if they want to, what you could do is one of the two could give a get, another one could just go and consummate the relationship because you know worse than some other person. You don't have to give a get. You could just have one of them give a get because we don't know he might be the one, he might not be the other one. Either the one that she was engaged to, and even that, now they'll go ahead and do a Kedushin and do a Nesuin. That's one case. Now, B'cheina Isha says the Mishnah, the same thing is regarding the woman herself. Up until now we spoke about the father to his daughter, and now the woman herself. She gave permission to her agent to go and do Kedushin for her. She said to her best friend, said, you're going over to the chasna, find the guy for me, take the ring from him. But then she goes to Mekadosh herself. So, okay, if her own Kedushin came first, Kedushin, her Kedushin is going to be Kedushin. If the agent's Kedushin came first, Kedushin, then her agent's Kedushin is going to be Kedushin. Let's say they don't know who did whose first. So both give to her a get. If they want to, one could give her a get, and one could go ahead and consummate the relationship. So the Gemara is asking the obvious question by answering and saying, they seem to be the same case. Why do you have to talk about a father and a daughter and a woman herself? Says Gemara, you needed to, because had we only said the first case regarding the father, regarding him, yeah, I'll tell you why. And this is where it comes into the theme of this parak, because a father, he's well versed in yichus, in lineage, and when he finds one that's more miyuches, so he's going to do the Kidushin, and he's nullifying the Shliach because he found one that's more miyuches. So you could say that, his doing the Kidushin first is being mevatel the Kidushin of the Shliach. But regarding a woman that Deloy Kimla B'Yuchas, and she's not well versed in Yichus, she doesn't know the whole tree going back and knowing who's Miyuchas, who's not. Ema, I would say, even though she's Mekadosh herself first, that Loy Nahave Kedushin. I would say that maybe her Kedushin should not be a Kedushin, meaning she's not really nullifying the Shliach, she's not relying on her own Kedushin. She thinks just maybe the Shliach is going to find more a Miyuchas one from this. So therefore, maybe she's doing it like, let's say, in case he doesn't do it, but if he's going to do it, she's relying on the Shliach, because the Shliach knows Zichas more than her. So therefore, had I said the case with the father, I would have said, but him doing it first, that's a bittul. But her doing it first, maybe it's not a bittul. So I had to say that case too. And v'yeshmin gabedi. So why don't you just say the case regarding the woman herself? No, because I could say the asvar the other way too. From the itza daiko mitzvah, a woman, she's very precise, and she gets married, and she knows she's going to have to live with this guy, so she tries to make sure that the pedigree is top. But I would say the father doesn't care so much regarding his daughter if she gets married to any type of yichus, and he's not going to nullify the shlichus of the shliach, and even if he does the kedushin for one that's more inferior, he's like, okay, I'll rely on the shliach. So why is the father doing a kedushin? Because he thinks maybe the shliach is going to forget. Meaning maybe he's not going to find. But if he finds, he's not nullifying. So the tzricha you have to say. In other words, you could say a svar faket that the father would have thought that he's not so, he doesn't care so much. He's not so invested. So in a way, the father knows more. So that's a svar one way. He knows yichus better. On the other hand, the girl's more particular about it. So a svar could be said either way. So therefore, you have to say both cases to say that no. By their doing the Kedushin first, it's being mevatel the shlichus of the shliach, and it's going to be their Kedushin first. Now, a related discussion, the Gemara says, Itmar, we had the following teaching, Machlekes Amiram, Kidsha Aviyah, Baderech. So let's say it's related in this idea of like two people doing Kedushin, we're not sure whose Kedushin was first. So her father, the girl's father, did Kedushin on the road. Now, V'kidsha Atzma Be'ir. Now, the girl herself did Kedushin in the city that day. And Varehi Begeres. What does that mean? And she's a Begeres. She was checked to know if she left her father's domain, that her Kedushin is a Kedushin, and we found her that day, you were a Begeres. So, what's the halacha? So Rav Amma, he says, okay, Harehi Begeres lefanenu. We see she's a Begeres, we checked her out, and her Kedushin is a Kedushin, and not from that of her father, because the halacha is that a Ketana, a girl up until 12, is in her father's domain. A Naira is in her father's domain up until 12 and a half. When she reaches the age of 12 and a half, and she has two pubic hairs, she has the signs of adulthood, she's not in her father's domain, and her father cannot go ahead and do Kedushin.
So what happens if a father does Kedushin to a Begeres?
Nothing.
Not a Chayiv Get? It's not a Kedushin?
No, sir, nothing, right. Unless she made him a shliach, there's no whatever, but he has no rights. So here the father thought his daughter's in his domain, so he goes and he's making a shidduch for his daughter. But she made the same day her own Kedushin, and we check her, we see, yes, she's 12 and a half, we see, and she has the Simone Godless, so her Kedushin is a Kedushin. So what's the halacha? So Rav says, yeah, Harei Begeres Lavan, and we see her Begeres, so her Kedushin is a Kedushin. Shmuel says, no, Chashin l'Kedushin, we're concerned for both of their Kedushin, because maybe when the father did the Kedushin in the morning, that's what the sun picture is like trying to illustrate, as we'll see in a second, that maybe she was a Naira. Maybe she only became Begeres later in the day, and therefore his Kedushin came first, so therefore you have to be concerned for his Kedushin also, although we see right now, later in the day, she's a Begeres, we don't know, maybe earlier in the day she was a Naira. So, therefore, meaning, let's say, because it's 12 and a half and the pubic hairs, maybe she only developed the pubic hairs now, whatever it is. So he says, no, you have to be concerned with both. But the Gemara has to clarify first what the case is. Emas, when exactly is this story taking place? As the Gemara explains. If this is within the 6 months that's between Nairis and Bagris, which the Gemara tells us that between Nairis becoming a Nara and the Begeres is only 6 months. When she brings the signs of Nairis, she does not delay to be a begeres, but 6 months. Now, sometimes she's going to be quicker to become begeres. What does that mean? How do you become a quicker begeres? I thought it's 12 and a half. No, you don't have to wait to 12 and a half necessarily. There are certain signs of bagris. The max is 6 months. But there are certain signs in her breasts, as the Mishnah says in Mesechta Nidaf, Mem Zayin Mem Aleph, Paga, Boichel, Tzamal. These are certain symptoms, signs of developmental maturity in a girl that would tell us that she's a begeres. But the point is, the max that it's going to be is 6 months. So if it's within 6 months, so Rav, this is where Rav is going to tell us that, oh, she's a begeres. What do you mean? But all those 6 months, she has a chazaka, a presumed status of a naira, until we recognize that she had developed and she blossomed, and we could see that she is a begeres. Now, when we check her in the evening and we find that, oh, yeah, she developed, she's a begeres. Who's to say in the morning she was also begeres? Maybe now she became hashtahu de bagra. Now she became begeres. And the chazaka tells us that she wasn't. Chazaka tells us that you are what you were until we know differently. In these 6 months, the presumption is you are a naira. So how could Rav say if it's within the 6 months that, oh, how did begeres lavanenu? Yes, now she is. But why would you say, not like Shmuel, that we're not concerned for the morning that she was still a naira? Okay, so what are you going to say? No, we're talking about post 6 months. And wait a second, if you most definitely filled up the 6 months, then she became a begeres already. Because the max of nairis is 6 months. On this Shmuel is going to say, Chashin Kidushin, concern for Kidushin of both of them? How's that possible? Shmuel says, Shmuel himself said the teaching that the max between nairis and bagris is 6 months. If it's 6.5 months, and now we're not sure, what do we not sure? It's definitely her Kidushin and not the father's. So the Gemara says, no, leit tzricha, the Kaddish Bahu Yoima the Mashlim Shisha. The Kidushin of both of them were on the day that completes the 6 months. The father did Kidushin in the morning. She did it later in the day. And this is the day that we have a chazaka that she will become a boigeres. That's the case that we're talking about. And that's what the Gemara explains. That's what the son is trying to show the picture. That Kitcha Vi in the morning, Kitcha Atzma, and now we see later in the day she's a begeres. That's the day when
why have the Chachamim make a dekana? I mean, why would they allow such a potential situation to arise?
It's not so much about the Chacham. It seems to be the reality of development. Why did God make it?
I understand, but even though the father has the right to make Kidushin for his daughter, who says he has the right to do it?
Up until begeres. Now, when is she becoming? When does bagris happen? We don't have. We're not wearing body armor that's telling us the temperature and everything and knowing exactly when bagris happens. So there's always going to be doubts in bein hashmashas. There's elements of that in all of creation.
Right, but we light, for example, early because we make sure that there's a gvul. We light early, Makabel Shabbos early, so we don't light by bein hashmashas. So
yeah, because we don't want to get involved in doubts. But certain doubts you can't escape. Like over here, you don't know when exactly.
That's all I'm saying.
Right. But here, we don't know. The father did a Kidushin, she did a Kidushin, and it was on the day. Right, so he was trying to chaparayin, get her engaged to he wanted to that suitor. And then she's like, no, I'm gonna get. So that's the question. What's the status? So Rav Ami says, Hare begeres lefedeinu. Look, she's a begeres. So what's his svara? So that the Gemara explains. He holds middahash the begeres from the fact that now she's a begeres, b'tzafra nami begeres. And the morning she was also begeres. Why? So the svara that Rashi says, it's an important wording, is shekol hayomi becheska shetavi. There's two chazakas, if you really want to get complicated in the sugya of chazakas and shmaitza type of sugyas, but there's a chazaka de mikara, there's a pre-existing chazaka, which is all things will remain the same until there's a force that acts upon it. Anyone knows thermodynamics or whatever, that's going to change it from what it was, it's going to stay the same. And then there's also a chazaka that Rashi explaining Rav holds, that no, today is the day that there's a chazaka that she will become a begeres. So all day you have this chazaka, and look, she is the begeres, so we can presume that in the morning she was also begeres. That's the svara of Rav. Shmuel Amei says, no, it's not true. Hashtahu the Aisi Simonim. It's only now that she brought the Simonim, and because now it doesn't tell us anything about the morning, the chazaka that she will become begeres we know it's going to happen. We don't know exactly when it's going to happen, and therefore he says no. You have to be concerned for the morning. Obviously, there's more deeper understanding, but that's the simple understanding that he says. Which now she brought siman. No. So it doesn't. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't. It's meaning to say the last day. It sounds like that. That's the way it sounds like. Which is a good question. That she has to become by today, because no, but yeah, exactly. But it has to. But that's what I'm saying, right? So is it the end of the day? Is it today? Is it this day? There's a chazaka that it's going to happen today. It's not going to happen in one moment. Boop. It's not like the pubic hairs are going to pop out or the breasts are going to develop, or whatever it is. It's not going to happen just in 1 second. It has to happen over some period of time. It sounds like today it's going to happen. When is it going to happen? It's not clear. But it's not going to happen by shkia. It's not going to happen in a moment. I understand, but I understand, right? So the shaila is, what does it mean by 6 months? Is 6 months that she becomes a begeres without becoming? In other words, is it? Right, we presume that she's a begeres. The question is, does that mean she's? It sounds like that she's going to develop. There's the max of 6 months of her development. That means after 6 months she should develop. So it sounds like that she's going to be anatomically different by the end of the 6 months. So it's going to happen today. If it didn't happen up until now, she's a real late bloomer. It's going to happen sometime today. So the question is when. And we see it later in the day. Oh, she is. It happened before she, like you're saying, but when did it happen? It's going to happen today. Okay, is it today? Yes, right. That's what it sounds like. Al Kapanim, at least on today, you would have that discussion. So Shmuel says, no, we don't know. And again, the words he says is very important because it's going to go into the next part of the Gemara. He says, no, now we see simanim. That doesn't tell me about earlier in the day. Rav says, no, for sure, it tells me. Shmuel says, no, but what I see here. I don't know about earlier today. Says Yomah, wait a second. Shmuel, ma'ishna mikvah. Why is it different than the mikvah? What's this? Now we're doing the Mishnah Masechet Mikvah that says the following case. Mikvah shenimdad, a case that's brought many times in Shas, Gittin, Nida, other places. A mikvah that was measured, v'nimtza chaser, and you found it lacking. Oy, vey. Okay. So halach is like this. Kol tara shenas al gabav. Again, that's not so much the mikvah today's times of the Nida, but more about they used to have all their things with taharas, and they had to dip it into the mikvah. So any purification that was done in the kalim that you had dipped into this mikvah lemafreya retroactively, whether the mikvah was in the private domain, which generally the halach is sufek tameh b'rishus harabim is tameh, so here for sure it's going to be tameh, and bein b'rishus harabim, or whether even if this mikvah was in the public domain, which generally the suffix of a tameh in a public domain is going to be tahor when you have a suffix, this case is going to be tameis, meaning, as Rashi explains, because it's not a suffix. Obviously, because it was a suffix, because really it is a suffix. I don't know. When did the mikvah start developing a leak? When? I don't know. But if you said I don't know, then you would say all the taras in Rishus Harabim of that mikvah would be tar. No. All going to be tameis, because it's not a suffix, it's definitive. Oh, so what do you see? That we say that when we find something in a certain way, we presume, we are machzik, that that's how it was beforehand. Because if you weren't sure, that would be different. No, obviously you know what's now is what it was. So wait a second. Why didn't you say the same thing over here for the fact that now she's a begeres, in the morning she was also begeres, because the whole day is becheskas shetavi. Anytime you have this svara, like over here you had a leak, over here you have a svara, which is that you know she's going to become begeres. So why didn't you say that just like over here you knew that what's now is definitively before, you say the same thing by the begeres? That's difficult on Shmuel, who says no. Not like Rab, we're not going to presume what's now was before. Says the Gemara, no. Shani Hasan, the case of mikvah is different. Why is mikvah different? Because the ikal mem, you could say, Hemed Tameh al Cheskasai. You could say, wait a second. Whatever you had been toiveled in the mikvah, that item had its own chazaka, that it was Tameh. Ve'emer loy tavel. And I could say, that you didn't toivel. So maybe I'll say it's a suffix. Maybe I won't say it's zavada. Maybe it's not difficult on Shmuel to say that, oh, you see that what's now, we say definitively was like that beforehand. No, we're chayshish. Shmuel's also chayshish. So then, if it's a suffix, why don't you say suffix tameh b'shus harabim is going to be tar? Because here you have a cheskes tumeh. So that's stam suffix. Whatever the item that you want, maybe the mikveh taka has a cheskes tar. That doesn't help me. Because I have a cheskes tumah on the item that I want to purify. And maybe to say, maybe you didn't table it. So the Gemara says, and these are very complex sugyas, but the Gemara says, adrabah, to the contrary. Hemin mikveh al cheskes, like we just said. What do you mean? The mikveh has its chazaka, and say that it was not missing. So why are you saying that the item is going to be tameh because it has a cheskes tama, but the mikveh had a cheskes tara, it had a cheskes kashrus? So why don't you say that at least let it be a suffix? So, and we know suffix tamah shus ram is going to be tar, or at least say the mikveh is good to say that it should validate the person that whatever was being tabled over there. Until we know otherwise. Because we had checked it, the Rav HaMachshir came, gave a stempel, put it, what? Yeah, we know it was. But then a guy comes, the guy comes to do a bedika, and he says, there's 38 saw over here in this mikveh. This is not a kosher mikveh. And now we don't know, since the last time it was checked, what happened. So we said all the towers that were done are going to be tummy. And even if the mikveh was b'shus rabim. So that's the question, why? So the Gemara was saying, you see, not like Shmuel, you see that because what we see now, we assume was like that definitively earlier, the way Rav says. So difficult on Shmuel, why is he chesheshes l'shneim? Why is he concerned as if like maybe or maybe not? No, we see definitely. So the Gemara says, no, mikveh is different. Why? Because mikveh is different because you say hem tamah chaskasi the cheskes tamah. The Gemara says, well, to the contrary, say hem and mikveh chaskasi. They say that it was not missing. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? Harei chasel lefanecha. But you see it's lacking. How could you say that you remain with its chazaka, but you see it doesn't have that amount? So the Gemara says, I can tell you the same thing over here. Hachanami, you could say, how do you understand Shmuel's halacha? You say that you see there's a begeres, and still Shmuel's chayshish for the Kidushin of the father early in the day that maybe she was an ara. Why don't you say, how did begeres levanecha? Says, well, no, hashtu the bagra. Now she became a begeres. What does that mean? So the Gemara says, so hasunami. Hashtu the chasa. So then you're back to the question on the mikveh. Why is that any different? Why is it there also that, well, now it became lacking? So tell me the difference between the mikveh and between the begeres. Why Shmuel don't you say, you seem to be, we don't have a good svara yet, why it's difficult on Shmuel that he doesn't, Rav makes sense. Rav says, yes, what's now is earlier. Well, that's exactly what you find by the mikveh. That it's chasa now, okay, we're going to say it was chasa earlier, and therefore all the towers are going to be tummy. But under Shmuel, it's difficult. What's the difference between the two cases? Why by begeres he does not say we presume the issue was begeres early? We're chayshish, maybe begeres, maybe naira. And by mikveh, we're not chayshish. We're not mesupik. We say no, for sure it was chaser. What's the difference? So the Gemara says, I'll tell you the difference. Hasam, in the case of mikveh, you have tarti l'reyasa. You have two flaws. Number one, you have the chazaka of tumah. Hemed, tamah, cheskase, whatever keli, whatever thing you were being toiveling in that mikveh. And you have harichasa lefanecha. Look, the mikveh is missing. There's not 40 sa. Hach over here by the Kidushin of the father and his daughter, you have chada l'reyasa. You have only one flaw where you could say, hare begeres lefanecha. Look, she's a begeres now. But if you're going to say, wait a second, why don't you have the other flaw also of Hemen Isha al Cheskasa, that the woman should remain with her chazaka, similar to what we're saying with the Hemen Tomei al Cheskasa? Says Rashi, no, because this is the day that the 6 months are being completed. You don't have a Cheskes Bagris and you don't have a Cheskes Nairis. Why? Because Rashi's words are, Shahayoim hi asuya lehishtanis. Today, things are going to change. So, you don't have a chazaka either one. You can't tell me Cheskes Nairis because I know today she's not going to be. You can't tell me Cheskes Bagris, I don't know when that was either. Oh, that's the difference between the case of the Kidushin of our parak and the case of mikveh, where mikveh has two flaws telling us that what was now was earlier, versus by here, we don't know definitively, and therefore we're going to be chayshish both for Nairis and for Bagris. Okay, we finished with the case of mikveh. But the Gemara has another question. Shmuel, why is this any different than the case of the barrel? What case is this? The time like learn the brayso. If someone was inspecting a barrel constantly to make sure that it didn't sour, and he left that barrel truma to continuously separate truma from that barrel. In other words, and this guy had this vineyard that he was, he made this wine company, and he had to separate trumas. Now, he doesn't want to constantly take from every single barrel, siphon off a certain amount to give for truma. So he just keeps these 10 barrels, whatever, one barrel, keeps it there, and he proportionally separates from it to rely on it for zafresh of truma. He says, okay, I know how much there is. There's this liter and that liter, okay, fine, and he keeps on separating. Now, when it comes to drink 100 lug of tevel somewhere else, he says, okay, let 2 lugin in that barrel be truma for these 100 lugin, and that's what he constantly does. He relies on the wine in that barrel. Okay. And then he comes into the cellar, and he sees that barrel is vinegar. Now, he doesn't know when it's soured. Now, the problem is, any truma that he relied on when it already soured, he has not remedied, because this Tana holds yayin and chaymitz, wine and vinegar, are shnei minim, are 2 different types. And therefore, that wouldn't validate as a hafrasha of truma. So what do? You find that all the things that you separate, you don't know when it's soured. So the halacha is like this, right? To bring back again to the suffix where things happen, you don't know exactly when things transition. So the halacha is like this. Kol gimel yom vadei. All 3 days is definite. Now, Rashi says what not to have as a girsa, which is important because it's very related, and Taisa also discusses this. Don't have the girsa that kol gimel yom harishonim, all the first 3 days are vadai, because it's actually machlekes amaram and baba basa of tzadik vav med aleph, which is a little complex for here, but basically there is an opinion that holds that all the first 3 days after you had originally checked, meaning let's say you have lahavdil, the porta-johns, the garbage truck just came now, they come and they write, checked on, emptied on January 1st, and then on February 7th or whatever, right? So they continuously check, or in the restrooms they come and they check and they see, when was this check last? So they would do the same thing also with the wine, to check and see that it's wine. If you checked at any point in time and you saw, it's still wine, it's still wine, we have a chazaka, we have a presumption that it definitely was wine for the next 3 days. That's Gimel Yom HaRishayim, the first 3 days post an inspection. Any tavel that you had separated truma in those 3 days are for sure remedied. But after those 3 days, you're already in the suffix. And then that would be truma to be forbidden for a non-kohen. But you would have to re-separate truma because maybe it already had sour and it was not truma. That's one man da'amar. This, when it says kol gimel yomim is vadai, is a machlekes amaram and babasa. What does it mean kol gimel yom vadai? One man da'amar says the word is kol gimel yom harishayim. Every time after you check the first 3 days, okay, it didn't sour enough to be vinegar yet, then it's definite. But there's another mandama that says, no, when we say kol gimel yom vada, it means this last inspection that we checked and we found it vinegary, we found it that it's vinegar. The 3 days before this last inspection is vadai chaymitz, definitely vinegar. And if you had done in the last 3 days separating truma for somewhere else, it's not going to be truma, and it's not going to be it's permitted for non-kahanim to use, quote unquote, that truma that you had separated, if you used it to fix the tevel, because somebody cannot become full-fledged vinegar in less than 3 days. So when you found it now vinegar, you know for sure in the last 3 days it was ruined already. So again, these are 2 very different interpretations, but it's just important for. Could be.
So it's not a really big deal. Take a little again trimmer.
Yeah, you could do it again, but just whatever you did was not valid.
We have bataharis, we have a chashash. What are we going to do?
Yeah, but I'm saying the point is,
over here we could get out of the problem really easy.
Maybe you could, but whatever it is that you had done was not valid. But that's just saying all 3 days are definite. Again, 2 different interpretations. Either it means from the prior inspection, 3 days after that, you know for sure it was for sure wine. Or it means on the last inspection that you found the vinegar, you know for sure the 3 days before it was for sure vinegar. Okay, but that's not the main thing that we want to have over here. It says, Mikan ve'elech, but from that point onwards, again, from before the last 3 days, let's say, then it's a suffix. So you're going to have to treat it as truma to say that a non-kohen cannot eat it. But you're going to have to take truma again because It's not clear what the status is. So wait a second. We had posed a contradiction. How do you understand and compare this brisa of the barrel of wine to the case of the mikveh? Why? What's the question? So the Gemara explains. Why is it different over here in the case of the mikveh? Where you're presuming that it was lacking from the moment you left it the first time. That Avamachsha came, he measured it, puts in his big stick, says, 40 saw, mazel tov, and he leaves. The next moment, you already are considering it chassid, because you said like this, the words in the Mishnah were, Kol taharis shenas al gabav, any taharis that were done on it. Even in Rosh Hashanah going to be tamei, so obviously it's not a suffix, because if it was a suffix, you should have said Rosh Hashanah it's going to be tar. So you're presuming the moment that this mikvah, obviously, in the beginning you had filled it up to 40 saw, and yet you're presuming from the moment you left it's going to be with a chazaka, not suffix, chazaka that it's chaser. And it's considered as vadai. Because if it was suffix, then you wouldn't say that the taharis in Rosh Hashanah would be tummy. So I understand. What's different over here by the case of the barrel, where you told me, in the intermediate days, suffix is going to be a suffix. Why don't we say the moment you first checked it 10 weeks ago, the moment you left, it was chametz, meaning definitively chametz. Why are we treating it as a suffix? What's the difference between the case of the barrel of wine and the mikvah? So this is all leading up to the question we're going to have on Shmuel. He says, Mad Tana Chavis, who's the Tana of the Bryce who took on the barrel of wine? That's Rabbi Shimon. You're right. He actually considers the case of the mikvah also as a suffix, not as vadai. They're telling we learn the Brisa, which is regarding this case of a mikvah that you find it lacking. So on that, first the Brisa quotes the Tana Kama that we mentioned. Kol tahara shenas al gabav l'mafrei. Any times that were done on it retroactively, b'mishas yochid, b'mishas ram tameis. That's how the Mishnah held Masechet mikvahs. But Rabbi Shimon he says no. B'mishas rabim tahayrais. In the public domain, it's going to be considered as pure. B'mishas yochid tailen. In the private domain, we're going to suspend it, meaning like all halachas of when we have a suffix regarding tumah, that the halacha is that okay, we're not going to burn it, but we're not going to be able to consume it. So, according to Rabbi Shimon, he holds B'Shus Yochid as Tailen, as the Gemara explains in the first sugya Masechet named Daf Gimel and Aleph, that it's not comparable to the case of suffix Saitu, which is really we will learn out the halacha of suffix Tam B'Shus Yochid, which that's considered like Vadai, because by Saitu there's at least Reglaim Odav, it's indicating features that she must have done something inappropriate because all this going on, and we're warning her, and she's hiding, and she's secluded, whatever. Al Kapanim, it's Tailen. But the one thing is, okay, that resolves the question. Because according to Rabbi Shimon, it's not a steer. Rabbi Shimon actually holds by mikvah also it's a suffix. But this is the way the question kicks in. Avol Rabbanan. But according to Rabbanan, the halacha would be teva l'mafreya. You're right. You would say like the Mishnah Masechtas Mikvayis. You would say whatever was remedied through this barrel. We would say, for the fact that now we find it to be soured, we're going to say originally it was also soured. So wait a second. Why don't you say that from the fact that now she's a begeres, definitively in the morning she was also begeres, which is not like Shmuel? Similar question like we had asked from barrel, from the mikveh, we're asking again from barrel because we asked a contradiction and we proved that the halacha of barrel, the Rabbanan would hold, not like the way the Brisa says that it's a suffix, they would hold that it's a vadai, as we just showed because it's a stira, and we said that must be like a Shimon. Okay, but the Gemara is really asking the same questions. The Gemara says, no, Shani Hassan, there it's different. And again, you have to help up why the Gemara goes either way in its Habaminus, but it says, no, there it's different. Maybe you could say, Hemet Tevel al Chazkasai. You'll say that the Tevel has a chazaka of Isser, and therefore the Emel in the Sack, it's not Stam a suffix. Maybe it is a suffix. We see it's a Vadai. Yeah, because you have a Cheskes Isser. The Tevel presumably is Asr until you know otherwise. So the Gemara says, Adrab, to the contrary. Why don't you say that the barrel of wine that you had been designated for the truma, that it has its chazak, it's really the same svaras as we said with the mikvah, but say it didn't sour. So what do you mean? Cook. It's chametz in front of you. It's soured. So look at the girl. Girl's a begeres. Why don't you say definitively she was a begeres like Rav? Why Shmuel? You're saying that she's maybe was a naira. So the says, no, Hashu the bagra. Shmuel says, What do you mean, Begeres Levanenu? It's not that she became not before. So the Gemara says, well, Hachanami has to do the Let's say the same thing over by the barrel of wine also. Say, now it fermented. So the Gemara answers similar like it answered by the mikvah. Hasam over there, by the case of the barrel of the wine, you have tarta l'reisa. You have two flaws. First of all, you have a chazaka of tevel, and you say that, well, look, you have a chemetz lefanecha. Hacha chad l'reisa or the here by the case of Shmuel, you only have one flaw. You have only the fact that here begeres lefanecha, but you don't have a chazaka of either one, like Rashi had said. You don't have a cheskes nairis, you don't have a cheskes bagris, because it's hashtu dishtani. Today is the day she's going to change. So you don't have two flaws, you have only one flaw, so therefore it's not a definite. There you have two indicating reasons. Okay, we'll say it was definite. Here, Shmuel says, I still stand that it's a suffix. We have to be cheshinim for both. You can't say like Rav that say, now she begeres, in the morning she wants to begeres. Not necessarily true.
Why do we say that her Kidushin
Why is that a re'eh? So that's just setting up the case. If she hadn't done anything, then there's no shaila at all, obviously, right? I mean, you'd say regarding the fathers, you wonder if the father's Kidushin would have been a Kidushin, and we're saying the fact that she did a Kidushin, but what does that help regarding defining her status? We just want to know, her Kidushin really has no relevance, really. If the father has rights, he has rights, and if he doesn't, he did nothing. Why do we bring it? Because why is the
story that he accepted Kidushin?
Right, because it really pinpoints. Because like it'd be harder probably to say if his Kidushin is a Kidushin or not. I hear. What's the relevancy of her doing it? Taisus asked that question, right? In a way, he says, "Amaya fliger Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg gavna Kedusha avir greda come at the pirish." Taisus asked that question. So now Taisus says that no, Shmuel would agree over there that when if just the father's Kedushin, that she would not be Mukadeshes. Because we would say Hemet Isha Cheskes Penuya. A very good question, but Taisus adds is also an interesting answer. He says Shmuel would agree in that case that she wouldn't be engaged. Why not? Because we would say Hemet Isha Cheskes Penuya. We retain the chazaka that she's single, like she was before she was engaged, and she's a begeres in front of us, and the father Kedushin wouldn't be Kedushin. Al Atasha Kitcha says Taisus, she doesn't have chazaka Penuya, because Mamanav Shach Eshes Ishi, either because her Kedushin or her father's Kedushin. So you don't have that svara, and that's where Shmuel disagrees. Very interesting, a good question. Right, and Taisus has that answer, a very interesting answer, Taisus has also that.
Wouldn't that turn it into another race?
No, Taisus says that if you didn't have a Kedushin, then Shmuel wouldn't disagree. Shmuel would say that the chazaka Penuya would make it that she wouldn't be engaged. Shmuel wouldn't be chesheshes like Kedushi Aviyah. So according to Taisus and your question, it's critical to have this, that she did her Kedushin. Now we don't have a cheskes. We have a cheskes. Okay, now whose it is? Oh, now Shmuel's cheshesh. So it's very interesting. Akapanim, the Gemara wants to know, Nebuchadnezzar. Let's say this machlokes Rabbi Shmuel in this case is a machlokes Tanoim. What's this machlokes Tanoim? Because we have a brayso as a continued Talmud Beis. If someone writes off his estate to other people, and he doesn't leave anything for himself, the halacha is, as is brought in Baba Basra, Daf Kuf Mem Beis, by a shchivmera, by a guy in his deathbed. So his gift is not considered a gift if he survives, because he revealed his intention from the fact that he didn't leave over anything for himself. Obviously, his command, his last will and testament was only because it was his last will, because he thought he was going to die. But if he was a healthy person, okay, you want to give away everything in your estate? Go ahead, it's going to be a gift. Now, what happened here in this situation was, now this guy he survived, and now he's saying, oh, when I had written away my stuff, I was a shchimera. So if I was a shchimera and now I survived, okay, so now I get it all back. They're saying, what are you talking about? You're a healthy person. You magnanimously gifted away all your stuff. You have to give it to us. So what's the halacha? So that's what the discussion is in the Brayso is mi maitzi. Who is extracting the nechasim miyad mi from who? So on that, the first opinion says, who maitzi miyad dam? He takes it away from them, meaning if let's say they got up and they had already taken possession of his estate, he takes it back below rayu without a proof, meaning he doesn't have to bring a proof that he was a shchimera. And even if right now he's healthy, when he's backing out, we don't say, for the fact that now he's healthy, must have been then when he gave the gift he was also healthy. No, he could take it back. And v'hein ein moitzim miyadoi b'lo yirai, but they cannot take it away from him without a proof. That's the Rabbi Yaakov. Okay. Rabbi Nassanami says, no, depends. In Barihu, if now when he's back now we see he's robust, he's a healthy person. Okay, you have to prove that when you had gifted away, you were very in your deathbed, and if you don't make proof, we presume the way you are now, well, that's how you were earlier. That's like who? That Shita of Reb Nassan is like Rav, who says the way we see you now is how we presume you were before. If he's an ill person now when he's backing out, they have to bring a proof that when he was actually wrote it, actually was a healthy person. But says the Gemara, because Rav says the way you are now is how we presume you were earlier. So here, if we see you as a bari, we presume you were bari earlier. If we see you as Shchimah, then we presume you Shchimah earlier. But says the Gemara, name of Rav Damak Reb Nassan, like we just said, Ushmuel Damak Rabbi Yaakov, because Rabbi Yaakov does not go based on the way it is right now. We say that, no, maybe when he gifted, he was a Shchimah. So seemingly Machlekes Tanaim is Machlekes Rav and Shmuel. Do you presume as you were now, as you were earlier or not? So I'm looking at Rav will tell you, no, it's not true. I could even say like Rabbi Yaakov. How is that possible? Ad can come Rabbi Yaakov. Where do we find Rabbi Yaakov says over there that it can be considered as a suffix? Because the Ikkalamema, you could say, Hemed Maman al Cheskasai. The money retains its presumed status, where before he gifted it, this original owner was muhsik in it, so that makes it as a suffix that we'll say we retain with the chazaka. So therefore, yeah, I agree there that you wouldn't say, from the fact that now he's bari, then we said that before he's a bari and he loses his money. But over here, do you think we say that the girl retains her chazaka and that she should be a naira on the day that she completes her 6 months? No, there's no cheskis nairis, no cheskis bagris, because today she's oimedis lishtan, again the same words, and therefore there's no chazaka, and therefore we're going to say, okay, if we see you now as a begaris, we're going to presume originally begaris, and therefore Rav says I could even be like Rabbi Yaakov. And Shmuel, he says, no, Reb Nassan. He says, well, I could do the same thing. I could even be like Reb Nassan. Why? How's that possible? I'd come to Reb Nassan. Where do you find the Reb Nassan that says that, yeah, if we see you as a bari, now we say earlier you were also. And whatever we see now, we see earlier, which is not like Shmuel by Begeres, he says, yes, because the Kulam, according to everyone, because everyone becheskes b'rim kaimi. Most people, we presume, are healthy people. If you want to remove yourself from the presumed status, he has to bring a proof. So if we see him now healthy, says Shmuel, I agree that in that case we'll presume earlier you were bari. But over here, when we're not sure if she's a naira, but you think she removed herself from original chazaka? Well, many girls. She didn't remove her cheskes nairos on the day that she's turning 6. It's going to happen, but we don't know that it happened yet. So therefore, we don't have to necessarily presume that it was oikered yet, and therefore, from the fact you see a begeris now, does not mean that earlier in the day she was a begeris. She could have been a naira. So therefore, it's not necessarily machlekes tanoim. Either Amar could say that he's like the other Tana. But it says the Gemara, let's say it's like the following machlekes tanoim, which is Kitra v'baderech. Her father got her engaged when he was on the road. The Kitra and the girl got herself engaged in town. But he begeres, and we see she's begeres, so we have an explicit machlekes tanoim. Tanach, the one brayso that says hare begeres, that she is a begeres lefanein in front of us. So we're going to say that it was her kedushin. Tani, the other one says no, cheshin kedushin's name. We're considering kedushin both of them. This mama sounds exactly like Rav and Shmuel. It's exactly like the words they say. My love is netchad kerav echad kishmul. One brayso like Rav, one like Shmuel, and we see explicit machlekes tanoim. Says Malay, no, not necessarily true. Why? Because edi v'edi kishmul, I could say both are like Shmuel. Khan, the Bryce that says that she's a begeris in front of us, which is the one that sounds like Rav, is b'makashasai. When she refutes her father, and she says, no, Tati, I was a begeris yesterday. Oh, you're begeris yesterday, we're going to believe her, and therefore, it's going to be her kedushin. Khan b'she'im makashasai. The Bryce that says like Shmuel is when she's not contradiction. Not contradiction, we don't know, we have the suffix, we have to be chashish l'shteim, and therefore they both could be like Shmuel. Oh, says the Gemara, wait a second. The name, let's say as follows. You just showed me how the Bryces, although they sounded exactly like Machlekes Rabbi Shmuel, showed me they're not disagreeing. Maybe say the Rama also not disagreeing. You could say the Machlekes Rabbi Shmuel is not a Machlekes. If it's logical, you can't say that. Because Rav Yosef, Bereid Reb Nash ben Vil, He actually paskin, he did a story like Rav, that when they had this exact story, and on the day of Mamish, that the 6 months, that the father did it in the morning and the girl did it late in the day, and then they found her late in the day that she's Begeres, and he says, okay, for the fact that she's now Begeres, we say earlier also, the Ikbit Shmuel, and Shmuel was bothered about this. When he says, I don't understand, he said it very cynical. He says, Kuli Almi, all the students, all the Tamidim, Kaili Bakavazuta, they get measured with a small amount of wisdom. They're afraid to rely on their wisdom and to permit a suffix of Isha's Ish, which you have to, it's a suffix Isha's Ish, but who should you marry? But this rabbi, Kailile, he was measured wisdom, he fell for him, they poured him a huge amount of wisdom, he relies on his understanding to permit a suffix and to say, from the fact that Nash Begeres, early in the morning shows Begeres, he was saying it very cynically, he's saying like, Grace Chuchim is, he knows better than everyone else, that because Begeres now, Begeres earlier, meaning he was passing like Rab, not like Shmuel held it was a suffix. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. If you would think to say that they don't disagree, why was he being bothered by this? But the teaching of Rav, I thought, if you want to say the way it was said in the Brises, was b'makashasai. So therefore, if this Rav Nachman if this was the Rabbi Yosef Bered Rav Nachman Medvil was doing a story, was that Dilmaki of it, maybe when they had a story b'makashasai, when she was contradicting and saying yesterday Tate was already Begeres. Obviously, the machlekes is when you're not makashasai, and here he did a story when there was no contradiction, and therefore you see clearly if Shmuel was bothered by when they did like Rav, obviously because they do disagree, and it's not b'makashasai. So Amli Mazutra Ravashi says, this is what it says. The Shmuel halacha follows like Shmuel, which is you have to be concerned. Maybe she should not maybe Begeres. Rabasham says no Hilchazek Avasei Derav, and the Gemara Paskin Hilchazek Avasei Derav, which we say if she's a Begeres Lebanenu, we presume that earlier she also was a Begeres. Now look, the next Mishnah again, continuing on the theme of this idea about Yichus and about the nemanus of the father, as we had in the previous Mishnah. So the Mishnah says an interesting case. A man and his wife go overseas. They move away, and years later, Bahu ve'ishto yobanav. Years later, this guy comes back, he moves back to town, he comes back, him and his wife and his children. He says, this woman that went with me overseas years ago when I moved out to the other country, this is that woman, and these are her sons. So Allah is it does not have to be a proof, loyal Isha, not on the woman, which Machlik Rashi tells you, but the way Rashi says is that she's miyucheses, because we already checked her when she got married, we already knew when they got married, and we don't have to check regarding the children, as the Gemara is going to explain. We're talking about young children that are wrapped around her, so we presume that she's the mother. We don't have to be miyaches with Adam. These children are following after her, so therefore he doesn't have to bring a raya on the children either. But let's say the story was, he comes back, and he says, Mesa, the woman, and he's moving back now, he needs some consolation from his old hometown. He says, the wife I had died, these are her children. So maybe raya alabani has to bring proof on their children that they're the children of that woman who we know is miyucheses. But maybe raya al-isha, it doesn't have to bring proof regarding the woman who was miyucheses because they already had checked her when she got married over here. That's regarding the children. Another case is isha nasasi b'minin sayam. Let's say a very different case. The guy went out single. He goes to the other country. He comes back and he says, isha nasasi b'minin sayam. I married a woman overseas. This is that woman I married. These are her children. Okay, maybe raya al-isha. He has to bring a proof regarding the woman that she's miyucheses. But he doesn't have to bring proof on the children because, again, they're following after her. We know that if they're wrapped around her foot and holding on to mommy's skirt, we know that they're the children. Now, what happens if what happens if the guy left single, he says he married someone overseas, he comes back without a woman, he says she died, and these are her children where there's no proof over here, then they have to bring a proof on the woman that he's claiming was the mother that she's mecheses, and on the children that they're from that woman because they're not holding on to any skirt because she already passed away. So the Gemara explains, he says, V'kulan, all the cases we learned in the Mishnah that you don't have to bring proof on the children, is like we explained, Rashi has said it, but the Gemara explains, when they're wrapped after her, mean they're connected to her. So the Gemara explain the halacha of the Mishnah, learn the Braisa. Someone says, I married a woman overseas. So maybe Raya Isha has to bring proof on the woman. But it does not have to bring proof on the children. Now, the Braisa concludes and explains which children did we say that on? Because Umevi Raya ala Gedailim, you have to bring proof regarding the adult children which are not wrapped, they're not connected, not holding onto the mother's skirt. Oh, the ain't tzarich lehevi raya ala katanim. It's only the young children you don't have to bring proof. But medrum, when do we say this? Be'isha achas, by one woman, where he says, I only married one woman. Oh, then if they're connected to her, then they're proof that that's the mother. But if he says, I married two women and one of them died, and these are the sons of that woman, then maybe raya le'ish, he has to bring proof on that woman that she's miucheses, and va'alabanim, and on that these are her children, and then you would have to bring ala gedolim ala ketanim, meaning even if they're wrapped after her, because this might be the sons of the other one, and she brought them up, so therefore that wouldn't be a raya, because there was two wives, and maybe the other wife they had connected to her. So then, even if there's a wife that's coming, you'd have to bring a raya on the other one, even on the banim, because it might have been from the other one who passed away, and this one became the surrogate mom. Thank you to any time for hosting us.